Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel where I'm exposing the hidden world of MK Ultra and the Illuminati as it affects all of us. This is Rachel Caruso, an MK Ultra survivor and ongoing target from the Merovingian Illuminati bloodline. So today, before we go any further, let me confirm the date and time with you. Today, it is 8:33 p.m. on Monday, August 17th, 2020. So today I'm going to give you an update, a personal update, what's been happening with me basically since the COVID lockdown in the UK, which began in March. So the last that you saw of me in real time with things happening was the violent trafficking by Chloe Nicholson and her family. In Totnes, England, you saw her and her family on camera abusing me. And then in my last video, right before this one, you saw that the local council aided and abetted her in that trafficking. So lots has been going on. I'm going to get into the events. I got a list written down here I'll be referencing. I'll be getting into the events of what's happened, but just, you know, how I'm doing, how I'm feeling. Well, I'm healing, so that's good. Definitely getting better. It's not without challenge. I have been in self-contained accommodation, you know, living by myself for the past few weeks. It is temporary. I have accommodation, and so my current accommodation, which was set for 5 weeks, it ends this Saturday on the 22nd, and I have something else lined up, but I am just a little bit shy of the initial rents. My lamp just kind of, it got tired. That was reflecting me. I'm a little tired, but you know, living on my own, the first time without a handler since I awoke from the MK Ultra programming in 2015, this is the first time I've lived without a handler. This is the first time I've lived on my own. Now, the landlord who lives in the building adjoining me is a handler. The woman whose apartment I'm subletting is a handler. But they're not in my immediate living space. I'm not subjected to non-stop gaslighting and mind control programming and mind fuckery and energy sucking, because these are energetic and emotional vampires. And that's not just because they're Satanists, but because they're narcissists. Satanists are narcissists, narcissists are Satanists. So I'm a little bit stressed because I don't have exactly what I need to secure my next housing arrangements. As I'm entering into it, I'm literally just 75 pounds short of paying for the deposit and the first month's rent. So that said, you know, I'm healing. I'm nervous and I'm a little bit stressed. I did undergo, you know, some attacks from the woman I'm subletting. Even though she's out of the country, she's made every attempt to harass and control me. And there were certain like psy-ops and mind control programs set up to be run on me here. But I've dealt with it pretty okay. I mean, it's been a source of stress, but I'm getting through it. I'm still thriving regardless of it. And I've been focusing on just my wellness and trying to enjoy life, trying to have a life for like the first time since I woke to MK Ultra, and trying to enjoy my life and remember my sovereignty. So that's where I'm at now. What happens, you know, the events that have transpired, I'm certainly going to miss a lot. I'm going to give you a rundown. I'm going to be able to give you some evidence of what I'm going to go through, or at least some reference points for you to check out to look into more evidence. And so these reference points will come in handy when I can make future videos that go in depth to each of these subjects. So I'm just skimming the top of all of this. I have evidence and everything to go into depth to everything I'm telling you today. But I'm going to try to work chronologically. So first off, after Chloe Nicholson's, you know, I was I was basically forced into the street, and that's how they always force me into living with a handler. They torment me and just break the law so that I am traumatized and in an urgent situation on the street, and then they obstruct all of my housing options to funnel me into whatever handler they have set up. So the first place I stayed was in Dartington. The first place after Chloe's was in Dartington, and it was arranged for me from a woman of a spiritual circle that I had co-created in Totnes and the Dartington area. Now, just around that time, and then as soon as the lockdown started, everything started to become very clear that that spiritual circle was 100% Illuminati. I mean, I could tell from the start whenever I joined it, like we created it together. It wasn't formed before me. And I joined it last August 2019, and I could tell that most of the members were Illuminati. I thought there were literally like 2 of, all in all, there had been about 15 that had come to meetings. I thought there were 2, maybe 3 who were legitimate, and it turned out that none of them were. And the founder is the only one that I'm still on the fence about. The woman who, she like put out an advert for like a call out to people, to women to help co-create this circle. She's either an asleep MK Ultra victim or she's a perpetrator. I start off always generous with my perception of everyone. I'm always looking for the good, hoping for the good, but I'm very cautious with that. So I can't definitively, I mean, honestly, everything inside me says that she's a perpetrator, but there were some signs to make me believe that she wasn't. I'm confused. I'll just admit I'm confused. As it always happens whenever I'm on the fence like this, time usually shows that after certain events transpire through time, it usually becomes evident that whoever I was questioning was in fact a perpetrator. But everybody else in the circle were Illuminati. And some of them were people that the founder, this woman, knew for years. And some of them she didn't know. But it was the founder. I won't say her name just because of personal integrity, because I can't definitively say if she's a perpetrator or a victim yet. And I mean, it probably doesn't matter if I were to say her name anyways, but it's just like, it's just my own mental construct of boundaries. I say names whenever I'm sure they're a perpetrator. But she arranged the next housing for me. It was actually through her boyfriend, her long-term boyfriend, who I did know was Illuminati. He was either, her handler and or her perpetrator partner, her partner in crime. But he was, at any rate, he was Illuminati, and he arranged, through this woman, he arranged accommodation for me. And I had only met him like just in passing once or twice. And so that accommodation was in Dartington. It was with a couple named Olivia and Chris and their family. A lot of gaslighting there, and some strange interactions. The man had let me know that he watches this channel. He watches my whistleblowing content. Now, I don't know their last name, and isn't that how it always goes? Like, if you remember with Chloe, how I showed you that she intentionally withheld her last name, as did the council then contribute to this whole psy-op of like, I don't ever get my landlord's last name. But these people, Olivia and Chris, are part of the spiritual community. They're well known in the community. If you're local, you probably know who I'm talking about. Because I was only there for a week, I'm not going to go into that too much, but just to give you the chronological order of what happened, after that, then I was funneled into a woman's home, and she was one of my childhood programmers. And actually, she had another one of my programmers living with her. So the psy-op, as it goes, is she was a landlord, or landlady, and she was renting out her annex to another woman. And the way I got funneled in here, I'm going to try to keep everything as concise as possible. The way I got funneled into that was more of a long-term client that I had, who had moved from her country in Italy, her home country. She moved to Totnes, and granted, she had been in the county before, but this isn't the first of my clients who has left their country to come live in this small town that I'm living in. Now, we're getting into some rocky waters because this is a client. She was a client. There's a potential for a lot of defamation towards me and my business, deterring legitimate clients from working with me. So for the time being, I'm not going to say much about her. I'm not going to name her name. She watches this channel regularly. She watches my spirituality channel regularly. I'm just going to state some very plain and neutral facts. This woman connected me to my childhood programmer to live with her because the deep state had obstructed all other options. And of course, this is all timed. Everything was timed from Chloe's so that I would be put out onto the street during the COVID lockdown, at the very beginning of the COVID lockdown at the end of March this year. And so there's no rentals available at all. Airbnb shut down, the website was shut down. People are running with the whole fear program of, oh, we can't rent to anybody else, and people are moving around. Family members, they're coming from other cities and starting to stay in their rentals. It was literally impossible to find anywhere to stay. And the only opportunity I was afforded was with this woman who was my childhood programmer, and her name was Belinda Connolly. Now, I had actually met Belinda a few weeks before, recently. Obviously, I knew her from childhood, but I went over to my client's house while she was renting for just a few weeks from Belinda through Airbnb, essentially. And so while she was renting from her, and this was it was in the earlier part of this year, while she was renting from her, I went over to visit. And as I approached the house, I had this visceral feeling, body memory hit me that said, you've met this woman before. Before I even saw Belinda face to face, I was like, this is a handler that you've met before. And we went into my client's annex. She was in the annex where my second programmer moved into. And I briefly met Belinda, shook her hand, I think even. And so that was my initiation into staying with her, living with her, being trafficked by her this go around. And so my client said, oh, I have an idea. Since you can't find anywhere to stay, do you want me to see if Belinda has room for you? And of course, Belinda had room for me. So the other programmer who was living in her annex at the time that I was trafficked there is a woman named Claire Smith. Now, by profession, these are both psychologists. Belinda is a psychologist and Claire Smith is a psychiatrist. So this is Belinda Connolly. She also works as a chef. I'm just thinking of all of her narcissistic conversations with me, or one-sided conversation attacks with me. how she bragged about, she just went on and on about her accomplishments and this cookbook she wrote and everything. And so she's had a myriad of jobs as not just a chef, but also a psychologist. I can't think of some of the restaurants she's worked at off the top of my head, but yeah, I'll have her Facebook link in the description box below, and you can check all of this out and do your research to see who and what all she's connected to and what her cover roles are within the community. But this woman is, in fact, not just a handler, but she is a programmer of MK Ultra. And Claire Smith, I can't find a photo of her online to show you, but she's about in her 50s. She's, you know, British. She has lighter brown hair, a little kind of like frizzy straight down to her shoulders. And this is her LinkedIn. And so I'll put that link in the description box below for you to check out as well. But this just verifies she is a psychiatrist. It's interesting that it's listed here as psychologist, but actually Belinda went on and on about how she is a psychiatrist and she needs to be known. It's important for Claire to be known by that. So anyways, right, so this is a flyer of Belinda's for her therapy. So this is actually for the, you know, kind of technique or the arm of therapy that she practices, but that's her little address sticker on it. So that was in her home. And, you know, whenever I met her, she told me that I asked her what she did, and she's like, she wouldn't tell me at first. Like, I asked her what she did for work or what had she done, what had she retired from. I said, oh, all sorts of things. And then I had to ask her like 2 or 3 times, and eventually she told me she was a psychologist, and eventually she told me she was a chef. It was like these were secrets. And then she also included, oh, I think it was the first time I asked her, she said, oh, all kinds of things, you know, people like you. That's what she said to me. Whenever I came to view the room before accepting, like, to stay there, she said, oh, I do people like you for work. And of course I knew what she was talking about, but she was, you know, it's this narcissistic conversation from hell where she's vague, she's constantly deflecting, you got word salad. She was saying, I'm an MK Ultra programmer. I program victims like you. And I had to drag it out of her that her, you know, cover careers were in as a counselor and a therapist. And so apparently this is the school that she attended for psychology, or she worked there, or both. So that should tell you that they are running MK Ultra programming, because this woman is trained in this, and she's so connected to the community. Loads of people know her in the community. It is a small town, and you know, she's one of these new age cultists, and that just runs amok in this town. It is a new age cult town, Dartington and Totnes. So I have loads of videos that I took for evidence of Belinda's corruption and her MK Ultra programming and the Satanism. So I collected all of that while I was there. I have loads of videos. It's a lot to put together. So right now, I just want to just give you a little taste. This is one of the videos. Now in the background here, I'm in her home, and this was the spare bedroom. And what you see in the background there is her decorating her house to the theme of Brothers Grimm. Now, just common sense can tell you, without even having to do the research, that these folklores, these dark fairy tales are satanic. And then if you do your research into Brothers Grimm, you'll find the worship of Satan. But, you know, just think about it. Brothers Grimm is creepy for adults even, but these are fairy tales made for children, just so inappropriate. I remember being read them even in school, like it was part of the curriculum, as in first and second grade. I remember in first grade, I was 6 years old, and we were being read Brothers Grimm, and I was horrified. You know, I was a sensitive child because I was living out Satanism and satanic abuse. But that's not like appropriate for anybody. And I wasn't the only child to think that it was weird or disturbing or to have nightmares. So it's overtly satanic. And she has decorated her house with it. Now you see these swaths of these patches of paint. She was testing out colors to coordinate it with this Brothers Grimm series she had hung up on her wall. What kind of person decorates, like gives a theme to their house of Brothers Grimm artwork depicting satanic demonic scenes of torture and imprisonment? I'll show you some close-ups here in a minute, but ask yourself, what kind of person is going to be decorating their home to that? So this whole video, as you see, it's 46 minutes. This whole video is about the artwork throughout her house. So I'm just giving you one small example. So this is one of the close-ups, or this is a close-up of one of those photos you just saw on the wall. So you see, you have this woman or this person who had been imprisoned, chained up, and then died and eaten by rats. And then you have rats eating up their scraps of maybe leftover food. So this is what she chose to decorate her house with. That is overtly satanic. And so there's lots of other evidence in that video and many others, but that's just to give you a taste because, you know, if I'm naming names, I want to at least give something to back it up, because I can easily be, this is a small town, I can easily be defamed and blackballed, blacklisted from everything. I mean, I'm already blackballed, which I have proof of. It's another topic we're going to get into a little bit later, but I'm blackballed in many ways from many different businesses and services and accommodation already. But your whole life, though, can be destroyed through defamation. So as I'm naming names, I just want to give you little snippets that show, and you'll see that these snippets come from a whole archive, a whole cache of evidence I've been collecting. So I reference Belinda without naming her in this post that I made on my Facebook page. So I'll put the link to this post directly in the description box below as well, and you can read through it because it does connect a lot of other dots too that I'm going to go into. So that's the ritual links with 3 parks that I happen to, you know, I happen to live in these cities, and I was subjected to the satanic rituals in all of these parks. Now, these parks are ritualistically linked together, and one of them is in the town that I'm in right now, the Dartington Hall Estate. And so I kind of mentioned Belinda without naming her whenever I mentioned where my current live-in landlord and her tenant, both of whom were my 2 original programmers. Belinda is the one programmer who was located in Hagerstown, my hometown, right down the street from me. That was her programming facility. It was set up to look like a residential home. Now, this post also talks about how there is a ritual link between me and England that has been set up. It goes into my childhood home where I grew up for 18 years, and all the neighborhood roads which led to London Town Road or Drive, where Belinda's residential programming facility was set up. So while I was living with her and Claire, I had memories come back to me. So I did a lot of memory work during the lockdown I would go out into nature, you know, there was nobody else around. I'd just take myself deep into the countryside, and that's where I would do my healing work. And it was like the first good opportunity and setting I had to do really focused memory recovery. It's kind of like slow going for me in the past couple years because I've been so heavily targeted. The memory integration, I do constant emotional integration. But when you have lived so many different extreme lives and all of these alters, and that narrative, that storyline is such a discord from the one your core or cover personality knows, you have to integrate the cognitive awareness of those memories, like the cognitive story. You have to integrate it in pieces so that you don't literally go insane. And you also have to have a good solid emotional foundation. So you have to have built up your emotional literacy and your ability to deal with the emotions that come through with those memories. So that has always been my forte and my focus for myself, for my healing. There's been plenty of memories, but more came through in the last few months. It was just the right time. And so I had memories coming back specifically of Belinda and where her programming center was located, and Claire Smith and where she programmed me. And that was in a medical facility, so I'll show you here in a second. But as I said, whenever I first met Belinda, when my client was staying with her, I had this like a visceral intuition in my body hit me before we even went into the building. I was like, I know this woman, she's a handler, and she's not just a handler, but she's a programmer. And then, you know, in addition to all of this, there was a lot of, while I was living there, there was a lot of MK Ultra programming and a lot of gaslighting and a lot of narcissistic manipulation. So all of that goes to the evidence of them being programmers and Illuminati agents. And I have some evidence of that archived, like some evidence of their interactions with me is archived. And the stuff, like I didn't even need Belinda around to be able to take you through her home and prove to you that she's a Satanist. So that is archived in videos. So let me explain to you what I'm talking about with this ritual link set up with me and England and these English names in my neighborhood where Belinda was programming me. You do find like this basic report, which is handy for our purposes now, to prove that I did live at this address. This was my childhood home, 1852 Abbey Lane. And so you saw in previous videos me proving that my father is Phil Caruso, and his brother Paul Caruso was Jimi Hendrix's handler. And I have lots of evidence on hand of my mother, that this is my mother's name. She, to this day, cyber stalks me, you know, like 13 years after me going no contact with her. But so this was our home on Abbey Lane. And so let's take a look at the map here, right? So Abbey, of course, this is spelled with an E, like an English monastery. And so that's not like Abigail. No. So now our home was in a developmental structure called London Townhouses. And so you can see right behind us, there was also London Town Apartments. So I can't get quite a good shot of this, but you can see this is the entrance of Abbey Lane, and you can see that it's labeled London Town. And so it's this street that you go down. You see it's Abbey Lane, you go down another block, and that's where I lived. You go down the road over here, and you get to where Belinda's programming center was. So let's take a look at this whole surrounding area of the home I lived in, where the whole neighborhood was satanic. All of the residents there were Satanist. I mean, and generally Hagerstown was at least 90% Satanist and MK Ultra. You would be amazed. There are some cities on this earth that are like MK Ultra, like just experiment labs. Like the whole city is set up to be just an experiment. So you have Abbey Lane, which is English, and you have the London town townhomes, which are these where I lived. That's English. You even have the, you know, the English spelling with E at the end. And then behind us in this area here are the London town and what? Robinwood apartments. So Robinwood is also English. Now Robinwood, there's another ritual link with Claire Smith we'll get to in a minute here. And so what's behind Abbey Lane and these apartments and everything? Queen Anne's Court, English. What's behind that? Bentley Court, English. We have more Westminster, that's obviously English. You have London Town Drive back here, that's English. And so it was back here where Belinda had her programming facility. So I don't know, Link's View, like I don't know the origin of why they named this road that, but you can bet that it's connected to this whole English montage. It's not going to be the only one in the center of all of this that's not related to it. And you know, it's interesting, it might just be that it links it all together. Look at it, it's in the center of this whole English montage, so it links it all together. I know that it was around this area that Belinda had her programming center. I don't know, I can't remember exactly where, but let's travel then also to the other side of my house. So I was surrounded by programming centers. This was a residential neighborhood, a residential road, as you saw. Sorry, I lost my spot, but I couldn't get out into the city without passing several MK Ultra programming centers. Let me find my spot again. So that's us on Abbey Lane. Let me focus in on one direction. So if you come out this way, you get to the main road, right? And then if you come out through the neighborhood this way, you get to another main road. So first, let's go this way. So I don't know the ritual link to Mount Etna yet, but I'm sure it's there. But what else do you have here? Remember Robinwood and London Town apartments over here? About 2 miles this direction, you have Robinwood Drive. And so Robinwood is like a play off of Robin Hood. And you have this hospital. This is fairly new within the last 10 years. It's called Meritus Hospital. And it's connected to the original medical building that it was when I was growing up there, which was called Robinwood Medical Center. It was this big medical center with all these kinds of doctors. And then our hospital that was downtown, which I was also programmed at, that shut down, and our hospital became attached to the Robinwood Medical Center. So I was programmed there, and that is where Claire Smith programmed me, at the Robinwood and Meritus Health Center. Now what's also over here, do you see this? The Elks Lodge. So you can't get to the main road without passing the Elks Lodge, which is right here. So like all of these are residential roads that you have to go through from my neighborhood. So to get to a main road, you have to pass the Elks Lodge, which is a programming facility. And so if you don't know this by now, all of these lodges and clubs, they're just secondary names for Freemason lodges. So like Lions Club, Rotary Club, Elks Lodge, all of these places are just straight up Freemasonry under a different name. There's literally no difference to it. They just give them different names and slightly different appearances just to confuse the public. and to make you believe that there's no link. It's just Freemasonry. And so they do, you know, satanic rituals and MK Ultra programming at these lodges. And so there is one. Also, there was this Black Rock, which I have to look up the ritual name of that, but there's a purpose for it being called that, of course, like a ritual purpose. So you had the country club and you had this whole park here. Now this says that it's Ditto Farms Regional Park. We called it Black Rock Park when I was growing up. And so all of that was Freemasonry, MK Ultra, sex trafficking with the country club. And then that was my elementary school that I went to. And then over here, the community college that I went to, and that my satanic dance studio, Dance and Time Studios is what it was called. There were like only 2 or 3 studios in Hagerstown. That's where we had our recitals and where they had satanic rituals. And then Rocky's New York Pizza, the Rocky's family are mafia, they're Illuminati, and that's where we'd go to eat on breaks between shows, between recital shows. And this is all off Robinwood Drive. Like, it is literally everywhere. And that's just in like this 2 or 3 mile vicinity. And now let's go to the other direction from Abbey Lane. I was actually in the middle of making a video about this place, where I was programmed. So this office is, the C&O Canal Trust office is set up in a building with lots of different offices, and it's all MK Ultra programming. And namely, I was making a video of the Bechtel Group, which is Coldwell Banker. So they own Coldwell Banker, and they're set up in this building too. And I was making a video going into detail, outing all of this when Chloe attacked me. And so she started to torment me. And that's kind of like the point where I started to publish videos exposing her. And then there was that violent illegal eviction, which was just violent trafficking out onto the street and into my programmers' homes. So I have a video that's almost done editing where I'm outing all of that. And so you can see, like, if I was to try to leave my house to go to a main road, I would pass yet another programming center. In fact, there's a closed down hotel right in this vicinity that was a programming center too. It was Sheraton Hotel, then it was the 4 Points Hotel. And then all of these car places were part of trafficking and programming. My father, an Illuminati member, 33rd degree Freemason, was friends with all of these men who managed or owned all of these car places, especially the guy at Hamilton. I forget his name, but my dad was really good friends with him. And, you know, I found myself at these car lots all the time. You know, those are the memories stored in my core personality. And there's no explanation of like these incessant long trips to these car lots. That's because it was programming, sex trafficking, and satanic rituals. So I mentioned before in one of my videos, I don't know if it's on my BitChute channel, but it's on my YouTube channel, and it's entitled something like When It Doesn't Add Up, and then also UK Handlers Exposed. And in that video, I mentioned that there was this house sale psy-op that was run on me, and it was essentially just these realtors who were doing the programming and trafficking. And so my mother was constantly taking me to these realtors throughout my life, supposedly selling our home when nobody ever even came to look at our home for, like, it was on the market for 10 years and we never sold it, and nobody even came to look at it. And so that building, Coldwell Banker, they are owned by the Bechtel Group. And I didn't know how, you're just going to have to wait for that video. It goes deep, and it is shocking what I was able to uncover just spontaneously whenever I was just exploring the things that I remembered. And then I would found research that backed up my memories and my claim of them being Illuminati. And so then also there were fields over here, which is, there was a weird farm here, very creepy farm here, and then fields in this area and woods, and that is where we did our weekly, my neighborhood, my satanic neighborhood, we did our weekly satanic rituals on Friday nights. And the code name for that was wow, that's weird, it really just ripped, like I felt it getting ripped out of my head whenever I tried to remember the code name. It was block parties. So that's what they called it. So I've showed you my neighborhood, and I've showed you some links that you can easily look into, you know, like the Elks Lodge, Bechdel Group, and a few of the other things. You can easily look into that to find a lot of material showing that these are Illuminati and Freemasonry. And you saw how my childhood home was in the middle of all of that. And you saw how that whole neighborhood, like namely that neighborhood, as you branched out, the types of names of the streets started to change from this English montage. But that's like whole circle surrounding me was an English montage. And that's where one of my recent handlers, who was my programmer in childhood, that's where this English woman lived for her programming facility. Now, I didn't even remember, or I never even realized that there was that English montage in my neighborhood until I had the memories come back about Belinda, and I had a general idea of where her house is located. So I went to look at it on the map, and I was like, holy shit, this is all English stuff. And it made sense because at the same time, I was having memories returned to me about the local park, the Dartington Hall Estates, being grounds for satanic rituals, and that being connected to the Hagerstown City Park and also New York's Central Park. And so that's what I was going into with this link. So please check that out. It has some details. I'll have to make a separate video for that, but it's talking about how all of those parks are ritualistically linked, and it gives you some background information to prove to you that it's Illuminati run. And, you know, a lot of people, there's already plenty of evidence being deconstructed about Central Park, New York. But what's interesting is Hagerstown, this town that I grew up in, that was notorious for being a shithole. We had the second most beautiful city park in America, second to only Central Park. Does that make sense? Well, it does if it's ritualistically linked. And you know what? We even had we shared one of the same designers. So one of them, I wrote about it in, here it is. I wrote about it in the post here. So George Burnap was part of the design for City Park in Hagerstown and Central Park. So this is information you can look up and verify yourself. But then while I was here and I was going to the Dartington Hall Estate, like I'm living just, you know, a mile away from it, I started to have, well, actually, I've been visiting this estate for over a year now, and I had memories coming back to me, but they were in pieces, and I didn't know what to make of them. And then finally, they're starting to integrate. And so I remember satanic rituals at Dartington Estate. And if you look into it, I shared some links on that Facebook post that you can go into. It's overtly Illuminati owned. So Dorothy and Leonard Elmhurst, I only looked into Dorothy. I haven't even had a chance to look into Leonard Elmhurst yet, but Dorothy Elmhurst was married before. As you can see, her original last name was Payne, and Payne is already deconstructed as an Illuminati bloodline. And then she married a man, she married into the Whitney family. And then whenever she married Leonard, she changed her name to her last name to Elmhurst. So I only looked into just Dorothy, and all the Illuminati bloodline stuff is very transparent. So if you even just go to the Wikipedia, you'll read about it there. If you go to Bibliotech, this website here, you'll read about the Illuminati aspect and the Skull and Bones. So Skull and Bones is an elite satanic cult that's part of Illuminati, and they, the Collins and Whitney bloodlines helped to start Skull and Bones. There's a lot for me to go into there, so I'm going to try to put a pin in that for now. I'm laughing because like I don't know where to start and what I need to include in this video and what's safe or appropriate for me to share right now. I was just thinking that I have connected to 2 MK Ultra survivors. I've connected to them online who both have very clear memories of being ritualistically abused and programmed by Skull and Bones directly. And here you have that same family running, you know, part of the setup of this estate here. And so if you're not from the UK, these estates, you know, whenever they open them to the public, it's basically like a big park. It's kind of an American analogy. And they have different businesses that they can set up, like there's different cafes and even schools in Dartington, in the Dartington Hall estate. And then there's the gardens, which is what in America we would probably just call a park. So I'm going to move on to some other things in chronological order. So I was at Belinda and Claire's from like the beginning of April of this year until, oh my God, I felt like 10 years, until just like 5 weeks ago. So what is that? It was July. Yeah, mid-July. And loads more I could say on that, but we'll put a pin in it there. And then I came to this woman's home who targeted me. And that's where I'm living now. So she subletted it to me while she left the country. So I have a great deal of evidence on her as well. She has been harassing me, gaslighting me, running certain mind control programs on me. But you know, the most transparent of abuse that is on the record is her control, her severe, blatant gaslighting, her manipulation, her lying, and her harassment. I'm not going to go into it all in this video. It's one of those things, it's a lot to compile, but I'm going to show you that she did target me. She came, she sought me out. So I had posted in a Facebook group that was for private accommodation renting in the local area. And she responded to it, and this is her message to me. Dear Rachel, we have met before. So I met her around this time last year, about subletting for a few weeks while she went on a trip, and it just didn't work out with the money at the time. I was living with another, I just ended up with another handler. But so I met her, and I could tell from our first interaction and really her response that she was at least a narcissist. So that's always my red flag. You know, if you're an MK Ultra target and you have narcissists in your life, especially if it seems like they're kind of thrown your direction, that's your cue that they are a handler. So that's just a red flag to be alerted to. So she said, Dear Rachel, we have met before. After seeing you a few times on here, she's talking about the Facebook group, for a temporary home or more, I thought to approach you since we know each other a bit. I'm away from, you know, this time. I'll rent to you for $450 a month. It's normally $550, but she has plants and a garden. She has a whole freaking elaborate garden. That's a bit overcrowded, actually. But she kind of downplays it. I have some plants and some bit of garden pots that would need watering. If you would consider doing that, then she would lower the rent. I know you are someone considered that would be suitable and a peaceful energy here. Really? How does she know this? So this is a theme that a lot of handlers run with me, especially the New Age cultist. They will say, I trust you. I just have a good feeling about you. Oh yes, you're welcome here. Like, oh, come in, like lower your guard and relax. I know you've been like straining for a home because I'm part of this Illuminati trafficking ring that's doing this to you. So I know you've been strained for that. So, oh, relax. Yeah, you'll have a home here, and you can lower your guard. And they'll just, because they'll repeatedly say, oh, I trust you. And whenever I say something about myself, they'll always say, oh, I know. I'm like, really? How do you know that? Like when we first meet. So like, for example, when I met Djamila, I said, you know, I like being clean. And she said, I know you do. Really? How do you know that? So it's just part of this psy-op. That's part of the game they play. I trust you. So like you see it right here. I know you are someone considered that would be suitable and a peaceful energy here. I love this place. So she's saying like, oh, Herb, and she's said this to me in conversation before, which I have record of elsewhere, you know, oh, her place is so special. She's worked on the energy here to make it really high vibe. And so when I asked her if she had other people looking to sublet from her at this time, she said, yeah, there's 2 other people, but I want you. I think your energy would be better. That's what she said to me. So you're seeing this, that's here as well. And she goes on to say, every time I saw you in town, I couldn't remember where we met. Bullshit. So I would see her around town, and because I'd already had flags, red flags, that she was a narcissistic handler, I would pretend like I didn't see her. And she would make these faces. She would make these faces like, oh, well, we know each other. We're good friends. She was about to say hi to me. And I would just keep my face like completely plain, and I would just look on like I didn't even see her. Like I never saw her before in my life, and I didn't recognize her. And so she's playing this game of, oh, you know, before, whenever I was blowing her off, she thought she knew me, but she wasn't sure. That's not what happened. I was blowing her off. She would always like try to start a conversation with me. Like you could see that like these you know, narcissists have very expressive faces because they're trying to lure you into their delusion. So you could see like she would get excited, and like she was about to start a conversation with me, not just be like, oh, hi, there's a person I met once, you know, I'll say hi. So she changes it around like, oh, you know, I think I saw you in town and I couldn't remember where we met, and suddenly I do now. And so that's why I'm messaging you right now, because I just suddenly remembered. And it's reassuring. So she's just trying to weave together a logical story. And she says she knows it's another 4 weeks away for the rental, but I'm not looking as I could leave it empty with a friend. I don't know if she meant to say she's looking because she doesn't want to leave it empty with a friend. It doesn't make sense there. So she says it would be good to be seen as knowing each other for my landlord's reassuring needs in this kind of crazy times. She also would play up, you know, as this whole scene unfolds of me subletting from her, she would play up that angle of, oh, you know, my landlord needs to feel like we know each other. So, and it fits into that whole story she was trying to weave of, oh, we know each other. And when I was out and she saw me in town, she would act like she knows me. Like she met me briefly a year ago and we had no personal conversation whatsoever. And then it's once I agreed to sublet from her, she then told me that she had lied to her landlord, supposedly. I mean, you have to know that he's a part of this. But the whole psy-op is that she lied to him to say that we know each other from women's groups locally, that we're actually good friends. And so that right there, like just looking at that, that's very manipulative. I agreed to the sublet. She knows she knew I was really in need of a place. And then she says, well, I had to lie to get you in. And now you have to go along with that lie. She said, if he asks you how you know me, just say women's circles in town. So she's then forcing me to lie. And it's all just bullshit. I mean, he's part of it. This is all just mind control games and control. So I'm just going to show you one more thing to do with her. Like I said, there's plenty of evidence built up, but this is supposed to be like a summary video, and we got some other topics to cover. So I'm just going to show you some of her satanic relics. overtly satanic relics in her apartment. So, you know, all of this stuff is hers. This is a small place and it's like packed to the brim with stuff. And as she actually accurately put it, she's not a minimalist, but everything has its place. And it's really interesting because most of the handlers I've lived with, like all of them have been just absolute pigs, because it reflects the subconscious mind that like they just build up trash, and to them it's normal. Like they're not even bothered by it. They don't even see it as trash. Like they'll literally have piles of garbage everywhere in their home, such as Belinda. I've got that evidence on camera. So this was an interesting switch, something to do with her altar system. It runs differently. So everything here is actually the opposite. It's meticulously placed. She's very controlling about everything in her home. Like she's been harassing me to say like, oh, you can't do this now. Like once I started the tendency, she would just say, oh, actually, you know, whatever we agreed on, you can't do anymore, because it's going to disrupt my perfect home. And so if you look behind me there, everything is meticulously placed except for these right here are my books. And on the shelf below, which you can't really see, those are my books as well. So you can see how like they kind of, they're put there neatly, but nonetheless, they still stick out because everything is meticulously placed. Like all of her decor, so consider that you can tell what is meticulously hers. And then you come down here, this is her TV covered up because aesthetics are so important to her. So she had this cover on the TV, and it's there just for my filming purposes. So over here you have her altar, right? You've got crystals, and she has a lot of Hindu relics, Hindu and Buddhist relics all throughout her apartment. And so lots of crystals here. And then over here, you know, she's one of those new agers, so of course she has sage and everything, because this is a high vibe house. However, we go over here, and do you see that yet? There's a glare, so you might not. But on the opposite side, I'm laughing of the irony of this. On the opposite side of smudge tools, things that you use to bless the space, you have satanic tools here. Aleister Crowley is a renowned Satanist. There's no other way to slice it. He is known as a Satanist, and that's it. And so she has his tarot set. And it's actually empty, but I believe she's got these cards loose here, which is pretty uncharacteristic of her for anything to be loose. So that indicates to me that she used them in a hurry last minute. And yeah, so she's got the cards here. And then what else does she have? I mean, she has, I haven't actually gone through all of this yet, but you can see just from the spines that she has multiple tarot decks. And I haven't gone through everything, but just from the spine here, you know, the Aleister Crowley was obvious. And from the spine here, can you see that? That is the Merovingian symbol. You have a bee, which is also has been transformed into the fleur-de-lis. So that is the symbol of my Illuminati bloodline, the Merovingians. And so this is about magic. Now, I'm sure if you looked this woman up, you would find that she is a Satanist and that this is black magic. I'm sure that you would be able to research her satanic ties. You're looking at the evidence right here for yourself that this is black magic. And it's interesting, you know, I recognize the name from, you know, another whistleblower, Sarah Ruth Ashcroft. So that would be a key name to look into for Illuminati bloodlines. And then something else, this is a tarot deck that I did explore. Intuition led me to this. Dreams of Gaia. Sounds good, right? I'm going to show you all of the blatant Illuminati symbolism in this. All right, so first of all, you can see plenty from the cover. Crows, black crows, right? Those are a satanic symbol and part of satanic ritual. So are eagles. And you know, you have this eye here, and it's supposed to be the third eye, right? However, this symbol is going to be used in an overtly Illuminati way through this whole tarot deck, which I'm about to show you. But and also just look at it. It looks dark. Dreams of Gaia. So they call it dreams because then it explains why it's so dark, because it's like it's at nighttime. And there's also a symbol coming out of the eagle's mouth that I can't make out, and I'm sure from the camera you can't make out either. But you can see that there's a symbol there. So that means that, you know, this isn't just like a spirit animal. This is being used symbolically. And then you also have the serpents, you have the snakes around the tree branches, and some other specific, like really specific symbols used. I don't know all of them. So throughout this whole tarot, it's all eagles, it's all crows, and it's all the one eye symbolism. So you know that covering one eye and just having like a single eye represents the Illuminati. And so you'll see that one eye. I haven't even gone through this whole deck. So I'm just showing you off the cuff. It's that easy to see because it's in probably every single card. And you have it in the sun. So Satanists are also sun worshippers. And you have that single eye in the sun. And I mean, there are things that, like, plenty of signs, especially when you're talking about nature, it can be used innocently and benevolently. But you have to look at it all in context and see really how it's being used. So, you know, we've got a very dark montage, and the whole theme throughout the deck is crows, eagles, snakes, and the one eye. So that can also indicate to you that everything else is a satanic symbol as well. You know, like the cats and the butterfly, which is about monarch programming, beta programming, sex kitten, monarch. So all of that is monarch and beta programming are essentially one and the same. And so that's the sex slavery. That's the sex slave program. And so you have more butterflies in this one. I don't see the one eye off the top of my, like, just at first glance, but you have it here. And it's not quite at the center of his third eye, but it's in the vicinity. So they want you to believe that that's what it represents. It's just his third eye, just like it is here, right? But it is, it's not in the third eye position, the third eye chakra position in so many of the cards. So they just put it in that position to make you believe that, you know, this is just your typical New Age. This is innocent New Age stuff. But what do you have here? Aha, more eagles and more one eye symbolism. So do you see how they turned it into a one eye symbol in front of the sun? Just by covering, just by the angle. And like I said, you got the eagle again. And what do you have here? Some more Illuminati symbolism. You have the white rabbit. And again, these things, they can look innocent unless you're looking deeper and you're looking at the whole picture. So sorry, it's not very focused, but there's your white rabbit. You also got butterflies. I just went through them all, and 99% of the cards are very dark looking. It's disturbing. Like, there's nothing peaceful about these cards. And so I'll show you. You've got the eye symbolism in about 90% of the cards. so here, hopefully the camera focuses. Here you have it in the pyramid even. So the classic Illuminati sign. And they make it small. So like if you're not attuned to this stuff, or if you're not looking for it, you may not see it, but it's there. It's intentionally designed. And what does it have? Eagle wings, like I said. Right, once again, you have the eye up here. See, like they tried to put it in the third eye position for some of it so that you just think, oh, that's what it represents. Yeah, so you got it again here. Once again, not in the third eye position. I know that the camera is not focusing very well, but you can see right there. And you know, there's also like a lot, you see a lot of horns, crows, and owls, and that's going to be significant to this flat, to the symbolism here as well. So you got lots of horns, you've got the one eye symbolism in the moon up there, and in the sun up here where my index finger is. We've got, you know, more crows here, and more wings that they're of a different color but could easily be representing crows with the one eye symbolism up at the top there where my index finger is. As I said, lots of owls. You got an owl right there. And see, like, again, this bird figure, it's a crow. It's in a different color, but it's all crows in the whole theme of this, you know. You got another black crow there. And do you see that one eye symbolism once again? And, you know, lots of these feathers within the beans that's representing them as a crow. So you got the feathers and horns, which can represent a number of satanic deities, including Baphomet. Do you see you got the one eye symbolism here? It's more subtle. It's just like a one eye, it's the eye shape, and it's got those wings on it again, which is actually the eye symbol with wings. That in itself is used as an Illuminati symbol. And you got the owl, specifically the white owl. I've been noticing is used by the Illuminati. Got the white owl again. I mean, there's tons of symbolism in every one of these cards, but we can't possibly go through it all. The one eye again, and you have the butterfly over the genitals, which I talked about, you know, the butterfly symbolism representing sex slavery, the sex slave programming. Is there anything else? You got the eagle right over here. I know it's not focused very well. I'm trying to save time. And yeah, lots of spiders too. So look at, like, just, it's a lot of it's pretty dark. This card is called Intuition. And you've got like this menacing looking woman and this menacing looking cat and spider and owl. And you know, that's supposed to represent the light of your intuition. Once again, one eye symbolism at the top there, as this woman enters a portal with lots of butterflies and crow's wings. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I'll show you for now. I mean, like, who does that remind you of? Red and horns. Kind of looks like Satan, does it not? Like the classical symbol of Satan. And then bats are a frequent Illuminati totem and symbol. And so you have the bat wings here. And then you have the subtle one eye symbol up top there. And this is interesting. I want to see if you notice it. I'm going to let the camera I'm going to give it a minute to focus in on that. So I'll show you the whole card. What do you see? All right, now you're looking at that pouch. So that is part of the Freemason uniform, and you can even see that it has the triangle with the eye in it. But that's just like the Freemason apron. So, you know, that's one of the more subtle signs, but it's there, it's deliberate. And, you know, you can see that there's so many more overt signs. So you understand whenever I point something like that out, that it is intentional. And you got more crows, more eagles, I mean, one-eye symbolism, and just everywhere. You got it in the tree over here on top of this triangle shape. Crows. More crows. It's crow's wings. It's not really focusing. Got crow's wings over here. In the whites, at least. Can you see? All right. I've showed you enough. You get the picture. There's so much more. Does this look like healthy to you? Does this give you the feeling of upliftment? It's dark. I mean, each of these symbols on their own can be used in a benevolent way, but the way these are all being used together, you see this, the skull and the black owl, it's dark energy. You can see it and you can feel it. Now, keep in mind then, you've seen a lot of overt Illuminati satanic symbolism in this, next to the Aleister Crowley tarot, a renowned Satanist. And now keep in mind the symbolism you saw in these cards, because you're going to see it throughout this flat. Now, I'll give Djamila props. She's also known as Sabrina. Sabrina seems to be her legal name. I'll give her props that she's hidden her symbolism well in her decor. Like, it's a very, she's got bright colors, she's got like a tropical theme, so it's supposed to seem like bright and uplifting. So you have a cage up there, and that's one symbol. You have dead butterflies in a box. That's another symbol. You have over here, you have a bird cage. That's a symbol. And like, you'll find these things in your research if you go researching Illuminati symbols. And she's obsessed with these tropical birds. If you saw on her Facebook name was Songbird, and she's had for her profile photo a bird, like a tropical bird like that, and she has these birds everywhere. So it indicates something about her programming or her position in the cult. I've never run across that symbol before, but it's like central to her identity. So it's obviously significant. Like, these birds are everywhere. Do you see that cup up top? Yeah, there's another example. I won't show you all of them. Then over here up top, you have the white owl, as we saw in the cards. Just on top, kind of like randomly positioned. So energetically, like psychically speaking, whenever I entered the place, I could see that it was like a satanic watcher. So it's in the position of like guardianship and watching. What do you see over there? Wings. Now, do you remember how wings were used in that tarot deck as to represent crows, even when it wasn't black? And then also stag's heads are a common Illuminati symbol. So you have one there, you have a second one over here, and then what's next to that stag head on the wall? Framed and central, the bee. Now this is the only artwork hung up. I mean, other than like this tapestry to give it that, you know, because it's a tropical theme. A tropical theme with a stag's head and another stag and a bee. So that doesn't go, does it? Why would the only framed arts in this room, you know, when you frame something and you hang it, it's like you want focus to be in on it. That's the Merovingian symbol that you saw on that, what if it was like a book or whatever about black magic from that Ashcroft woman. You saw the bee symbol there. And you can look this up. I'm not the first to be able to report that the bee does represent the Merovingian bloodline. Remember, we even saw the bee in at least one or more of these cards. So, and look at how it's like, it's in this exalted position as well. All right, coming to our next event in chronological order. Plenty happens in between. These are just some of the highlights I can show you. I posted this video just about a week ago, violent gang stalking attack and the rise of fierce feminine. And I disclosed an attack by a local Illuminati, self-proclaimed Illuminati member. And in the video, I referred to him as his town nickname, Psycho James. Now, because this is on my channel that's dedicated to spirituality and consciousness, developing consciousness, this isn't my whistleblowing channel, I didn't go into the details of this man's identity. But Psycho James is known in the community. His family is from the community. He is from an Illuminati bloodline. He goes around telling people this, and I said that in this video. And he had been targeting me. He had attacked me a few times. And the account that I give in this video, I don't even cover everything, but the account I include in this video was violence. And the same day that I published this, like not even within hours, the same day, I get a notice of this post in my inbox, my email inbox. I get a notice of this post saying that his home has been burnt down. And she talks about it like it's arson. And so his last name, I was already pretty sure that his last name was Green Wanstall. I wasn't 100%. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't disclose it. But I'll show you his Facebook. So this is his profile photo on his Facebook. James Green Wanstall. He has two Facebook profiles. You can easily look this up. The link will be in the description box below. This is public information, and so that just verifies who this man is. So he didn't have a lot of photos, which is why I wasn't 100% sure. Because before I was going to accuse somebody, I wanted to be 100% sure, beyond a shadow of doubt, that I had the right identity. So that photo, though, even though he doesn't have a lot, that photo looks pretty much like the disheveled, drunken maniac who's come after me several times. And you can't see the right side of his face, and this might be an old photo, but he also has some small tattoos on the right side of his face. And so that's James Green Wanstall's Facebook profile, and then he's named here. And it's so interesting that she decided to capitalize his last name. He's named here. This was posted the same day I posted my video. Actually, I posted my video and I waited a few hours to publish it. But the Illuminati can access my YouTube accounts. Anything that's uploaded but not published yet, they can see. I've known that for some time now. So, as she says, both of his caravans burned, total devastation, on the corner by Appalachian Spring B&B. Now, this is the B&B that this woman owns. And I know that because she had targeted me to be a landlord handler. So she had, it was all very orchestrated that I would be funneled in to work for her B&B and have as a trade for housing. And when that didn't work out, she referred me to a man. His name was Dan Segura. Not exactly sure if I'm pronouncing that right. So you're looking at my email. So first I was in contact with Antonia, and now I did initiate contact with her, but I was funneled into that. There's a lot of things like tampered algorithms, certain things being deleted from online whenever I'm looking for accommodation, and then V2K as well that guides me to specific handlers. And so I contacted her, and she, there was a reason too, like something that she had said or posted on Facebook was like why I contacted her. And so she passes me over to this guy, Dan, who now I didn't meet Antonia. And interestingly, her last name is Del Mar. That was one of the places that I was programmed in, backwoods, West Virginia. It was a hotel. There were a couple places called like Del something, and one of them was Del Mar. So it's really interesting that it's her last name, and she's Italian. And so I'm part Italian too, and he's Italian as well. So she passes me over to him. Now, Bridgetown is a very satanic part of town in Totnes. Like, it's just basically a neighborhood in Totnes. Don't let the name fool you. It's not a town really unto itself. It's very demonic. It's high crime. I was funneled there the first, like, my first stint in Totnes. I was like trapped in Bridgetown with these handlers. I couldn't get accommodation any other part, and I can tell you how demonic it is, and the locals will know, and you can look it up. There's high crime in this area. This is a small town, so most of the crime happens in Bridgetown because it's demonic. It's very satanic. So I actually went and I viewed his place with him, and he was very, like, overtly creepy. And he even said, to me, "I'm a dark guy." I'm like, okay, great. So you are so normalized to your Satanism that you don't think that it's going to set off, fireworks in other people's heads when you admit to being dark. Like, it's like a good thing to you, or you don't even realize that it could be a red flag. He admitted being dark. And it wasn't like a joke, and it wasn't sarcasm, and it wasn't like, oh, I have a dark side. I went through his home, and he was like explaining why his home looked the way it did, why it looked so creepy and dirty, because he's a dark guy. And then, like, a year later, or maybe 9 months later, I saw him. So he worked for Antonia at her B&B. And then I saw him doing kind of like construction work at a previous handler at their home, at their accommodation. And so that was Susan and Mark Bennett in Totnes. I stayed there for like a month. It was a decent location, and they tortured me the least. It didn't have a kitchen though, so I wasn't able to eat very healthy. I had like some ways to prepare food, but it didn't have a kitchen. And that was where I was staying, like pretty much right before Chloe's, that Chloe Nicholson, the woman who you saw on camera abusing me. And so Susan and Mark Bennett, they barely tormented me compared to the other handlers, but I could identify them as handlers. And it's interesting that I passed their home one day. I was going for a walk like 9 months later, and I saw Dan doing like some kind of construction work inside in the parts of the building that I was renting. It was like basically one room on the first floor, and he was doing some kind of work there, like renovating work. And he looked out the window at me, and he glared at me, and I was across the street, and it was just so weird that his eyes would meet mine, and he obviously recognized who I was, an MK Ultra target, because he just stopped what he was doing and glared me down through the window. So now that brings us to an interesting question. Why is this woman posting on behalf of James? So apparently, now I knew that there were a couple caravans in that area. I knew where the Appalachian Spring B&B were. Oh, also this woman passed me over to another handler family for accommodation, the farm that's right next to her, who she's good friends with, the Selics. And so these are people who are well known in this area. And I didn't end up taking that accommodation, but she tried to pass me over to them this year. So this woman, she's got her hands in a lot. a lot of Illuminati trafficking and MK Ultra target management. So it's very interesting that she's posting this. The same day, well, actually a couple evenings ago was the time that I've had my video up. And I didn't know. I wouldn't have known about this unless I got that email notification of this post in this social media group next door. So, you know, this is too much to be a coincidence. Too much lining up with too many people connected who I can definitively say are Satanist. Too much of this is lining up to be coincidence. There's something about this post, like they made it so that I would see it. And then I'll tell you what, just yesterday, I was walking in the area for the first time since the arson. And before I even reached the area, this car pulls up. This was a gang stalker. This car pulls up from the direction of the burnt down caravans. So I was walking towards them. I hadn't passed them yet. The car passes them. She stops. And this woman, like in her 50s, maybe early 60s, with blonde hair that's like wavy about down to here, she stops me to ask, she starts to like grill me about what happened with the caravans. And just the whole conversation, I won't go into the details, but the whole conversation didn't make sense. It was one of those things where it's like encoded gang stalker language. And so without going into the detail of the conversation, this was a gang stalker who, once again, they wanted to point out to me that James's homes had burnt down. So that lines up with like this post was made for my eyes, apparently, by a woman who had tried to traffic me. And, you know, she may have been involved behind the scenes in my trafficking already. So just some interesting events and connections there with James. You know, all of that happened the day I posted the video talking about him attacking me and how he runs his mouth about being part of the Illuminati and his the specific connections he has to the royals and whatnot. His homes, they didn't accidentally burn down. That was arson. Everything is gone. It was intentionally lit. All right, so I have two more topics that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to try to be brief. So I was, on July 29th, as you can see, I was kidnapped by a local bus driver, and that is the country bus line. And so I made a post about this. So I would encourage you to read it, because I'm not like to go to my Facebook page and read it. I'll put the link in the description box below, because I'm not going to go into all the details. That's a whole thing to reveal on its own. I've been working on compiling the evidence in videos, but you know, I include my police report. This typed portion here is my police report, and I have a video of me making my online police reports. And so what transpired since that is the police like pretended to investigate. Lots of gaslighting from the police. They were evading contact with me. I never spoke to a police officer about this, and yet they investigated it. I reported human trafficking, kidnapping, and a hate crime and police corruption within the human trafficking. And eventually they investigated the hate crime. And it's funny because when I reported it, the only person I ever spoke to on one occasion was a call handler, and his name was Simon. He wouldn't give me his last name, but his caller number is in that Facebook post. And that was the only conversation I had. And whenever I said, so I touched on the human trafficking, which he tried to ignore when it's blatantly in my online report that he was staring at when he called me. So he pretended like he didn't see the trafficking, he pretended like he didn't see the police corruption, abuse, and trafficking in my reports. The kidnapping was the only part that he did acknowledge. And then when I brought up the hate crime, he laughed at me. And interestingly, when it came to it, that was the only part that the police acknowledged and then investigated. So I received voicemails from the police saying that they identified what I described as a hate crime, but there was no evidence. And then I have on camera, have the recorded phone conversation of the bus line telling me that there was CCTV and there was evidence of everything that happened and everything that was said that day of my reports. And the police had told me, they just left me a voicemail because they were evading contact with me. It was impossible for me to get through. I called 101 several times and I was on hold for over an hour every time. And I let them know that. And like I gave them instruction, like you shouldn't have to, but I told them, if you call once and I don't get to the phone, call back again. Like call twice to make sure I have a good opportunity to get to the phone, since I can't return your call. It's impossible to get through. And they refused to do that. So this officer, I have video of recording of all this. He leaves me a voicemail to say they investigated my report as a hate crime, but there was no evidence. And of course, it doesn't say like what they did to investigate or how there was no evidence. He just says there's no evidence, so my case has been closed. Several days later, I call the bus line to make a complaint, and they say, oh, well, the police are still investigating. And that conversation was insane. Lots of gaslighting. He's like yelling at me. He's lying. He's contradicting himself like all over the place. He's talking over me. He won't let me speak at all. They won't tell me their names, like who I'm speaking to. They won't let me speak to a supervisor. All of this insane stuff is recorded. And he said, this was after the police told me that they investigated my report as a hate crime, no evidence, case closed. And the manager of the bus line said that the police were still investigating. They were in continuous contact with the bus line, and that nobody has looked at the CCTV from the bus yet. And this was like 10 days after my report, after it was supposedly being investigated. Nobody had bothered to look at the only evidence there was. The police said there was no evidence. And here the bus line, they refuted my claims, because I was abrupt and I said, I was kidnapped by your bus driver. And they said, well, no, I don't believe that. But anyways, about the hate crime, because that was the only part the police were focusing on. So they went along with that. They were like, well, about the hate crime. Oh no, it was actually, sorry if I'm confusing you. The conversation was confusing. So lots of gaslighting and deflection and redirection. The bus line's defense was, if the bus driver asked me for my exempt card for wearing a mask on the bus, then I would have to show it to him. None of that is at all true. This is like made up law. There are no required exempt cards. And you can see this easily on the UK government website, which does routinely get changed, but I've got screenshots to say that if you're exempt because putting on a mask gives you severe distress, if anybody asks you, they shouldn't ask you repeatedly, but if they do ask you, you say you're exempt and that's it. And so they're making this whole thing up about exempt cards and how it's required. And if he asks me for it, then I'm required to give it to him. And so that defends the reason why he held me hostage on the bus. And so he's like, well, we have CCTV, so it's going to show if he asked you for your exempt card. It's like, well, great, thanks. You just outed yourself, that there's evidence to my whole claim, that there's a video recording of this that I actually have a right to under the GDPR. It's about accessing data that any professional or company has about you. You have a right to that. So I have a right to that videotape, and the police told me that there was no evidence. And so I have all of this on camera. And also the bus company admitted to the police directing them to blackball me. They said that the police instructed them not to let me ride their bus. Now, nothing about that came from the police. They just left me a voicemail to say, oh, we acknowledge your report as a hate crime. We can't do anything about it. It's closed. And here, obviously, there's clear conspiring for trafficking, MK Ultra trafficking, TI abuse, and gang stalking, blackballing, this organized community abuse, the kidnapping that happened, the hate crime that happened on the bus. And the police never even acknowledged my report of human trafficking, kidnapping, and police corruption and police being involved in the human trafficking. In no capacity did they even acknowledge it, let alone investigate it. So that is some serious police corruption. I've got evidence to all of this, so I'm working on putting it together. It's, you know, everything's slow going. I have to focus on moving this week, so packing everything and transitioning into my new home, which isn't completely furnished, so I have to acquire basic daily supplies for that place. And like I said, I'm still 75 pounds short for that accommodation, so I have to figure out how I'm going to pay that. So that's where my focus is going to be for this coming week. I was going to go into some more memories that have been returning to me. They relate back to the US, back to Deep Creek Lake, which I've mentioned before. I'm going to say that for another video because this is obviously has been a long one. But we covered good ground today, and we've got a bit of evidence and a lot of reference points that I'm going to be returning back to when I go into every event in detail with all of my evidence. So everything that I showed you online, all of that, the links are going to be in the description box below so you can explore it for yourself. So think about this. This is the first video where I've named a lot of names of local perpetrators in this small town area. So I'm definitely putting myself at risk. You know, God is in charge of you ultimately, but this is definitely going to upset the Illuminati. But just to say, this is going to be an interesting time for me. So the more you all can share this video, put more eyes to this video, then it acts as a buffer for me, even if it's just a deterrent for the Illuminati to, you know, more violently attack me. Yeah, so just share this video, discuss it, you know, talk about it, so that this isn't just like ghosted material floating out in cyberspace. And you know, we need to build a community around this to help meet my position. Like I said, God is ultimately in charge of you, but I could have an easier time in life if I had a buffer of a community who is, you know, paying attention to the things I'm exposing and the people I'm outing, and who wants to make it known, who wants to also expose this stuff, who wants the communities that they're living in, everyone, everywhere. Satanism, human trafficking, MK Ultra, it's in every town, in every country, all across the globe. It hides in plain sight, and I'm showing you how it hides in plain sight. But it's real and it's happening, and we need to expose it, and we need people to become awake to it and start to take action against it. So please share this video as much as you can, and also give it thumbs ups. Yeah, that's grammatically correct maybe, because that's going to alter the algorithm to make it available to more people online, and your comments do the same thing as well. So thank you so much for being here and for listening and for educating yourself about how the hidden world of global Satanism and MK Ultra programming and trafficking works. And I'll see you in the next video.